The movie is about two young women who grew up to know each other for a very long time. Lil and Roz are two friends who are almost like sisters. They each had a son, Ian and Tom respectively, who were also very close friends just like their mothers. As the movie goes on, we understand Lil had just lost her husband and her sonny and was taking it hard on himself. Tom's stepfather Harold comes into a room and sees Tom watching TV. He tells Tom to take Ian to go play outside at the sea. The two boys pick up their sticks and hooks and runs into the sea. A while later they are on their surfboards learning to surf. Sometime after, the two boys are shown to be grown and matured as they surf in the open sea. Their mothers happily admire them from afar as they surf together, and after they are done surfing, the two boys takes a quick shower. Later that evening, Lil and Roz are looking at picture from their early lives in a book. Ian Tom comes in and takes the book away. Tom teases both Lil and Roz while Ian takes the book to the corridor and looks at pictures of he and his dad. His mother Lil comes to check on him before telling him to come eat dinner. At dinner, all four of them talk and laugh together. Little talk about their early days of relationship while Ross tries to brush it up. The two boys kept laughing and making jokes. After they play card games, the boys wins and makes their mothers laugh, and quite immediately Harold comes into the apartment. He kisses Roz and tells her he had news for her. As for Lil, she decided to leave Raz's home and call it a day. Ian declined his mother's request and decided to stay with Tom for the night. Later, Harold breaks the news of him getting a job to teach as a senior lecturer in drama at Sydney University. Raz is happy for Harold, but when Harold tells her she would have to move, she gets a bit upset. She's been staying in the beachside all her life, so it wouldn't be easy for her to leave. After at night, Harold confessed he never thought he would get the job. That's why he never discussed it with Ross. When they sleep, Roz wakes up from bed and walks into the boys' room. She gets a drink for herself before seeing Ian sleep with a photo book from earlier. When she takes it away from him, he wakes up but later goes back to sleep. The next day at work, Lil is visited by a man called Saul who turned out to have feelings for her. He tells her he was inviting her to his birthday since he was celebrating it this year. Lil lies to him she couldn't make it because she had a book club to attend to that evening. After the man leaves, Roz laughs at Lil and tells her she was a very good liar. Later, Raz is accompanied by Harold to her gallery. Harold tries to convince her to leave with her son to Sydney, but Roz tries to make him understand she needs time to get used to the idea. Harold agrees but still thinks she didn't want to leave because of her best friend Lil, who he thought might be her romantic lover too. Roz kisses him just to ensure that wasn't true. After work, Ross tells Lil about what Harold thinks of them on their way to the beach. When they sit and talk about it, they laugh over the matter like it was nothing. A couple days later, Tom and his mother Ross sees Holland off before he leaves to Sydney. Roz uses her spare time to visit the sea. She swims over to a piece of wood in the middle of the sea. She climbs on it and notices Lil's son Ian resting on the wood. She joins him and asks for his cigarette. Ian admires the lady as she smokes, and later, turning over to relax, he asks her how she was. The lady responded with a beautiful smile and said she was all right. Towards night time, the two families have dinner together, talking and laughing like they always did, even making fun of Saul. Lil gets up and begins dance to a music playing at the background. After their little merry, Lil goes back home, but her son Ian chooses to stay behind and look after his best friend since he drank too much in the middle of the night. Roz takes a break from her work and was about to go to bed when Ian comes out of her room. She asks him if he had everything he wanted, but the boy replies with a no before stretching out to kiss her lips. Roz didn't show any sign of retaliation away. Instead, she kisses him back and their affection towards each other is shown for a while. Meanwhile, Tom wakes up and goes out of his room for a drink. At that time of the night, he sees his mother scurry out of Ian's room half naked. He felt very upset about what he saw, so he spent the remaining time of the night on the beach. He later arose early to go over to his best friend's apartment, which was just few minutes from his. He sees Lillian's mother and tells her he doesn't want to leave with his father to Sydney. Lil tries to comfort him, but he uses that opportunity to steal a kiss from her. Lil pushed him away and stood up immediately. She was dumbfounded by Tom's action, but not after he told her he saw his mother coming out of her son's room with her jean in her hands last night. Lil is shocked to hear such a news. Back at the Tom's house, Tom refuses Ian's offer to come surfing with him while Lil takes takes a trip to spy on Ross in her art gallery. That same night, Tom goes over to Lil's and asks her to let him stay in her house for the night. When Lil is asleep, Tom enters her room and sleeps on her bed. In the morning, he touches Lil in a romantic way. She turns around and replies by kissing him effervescently. When Tom returns home that morning, his mom wants to know where he was. Tom let his mother know he was at Lil's, doing to Lil what Ian did to her. His mother is angered by his response and slaps him on the face. Ross goes to Lil's work to see Lil. Ross is ashamed and tries to let Lil know that what they crossed the line and what they both did shouldn't be repeated again. After Lil breaks the news to her son Ian, she explains Ross doesn't want their affair to continue, but Ian tells his mother he loves Ross. His mother is short of words and sits on her bed. The whole situation is a shock to all of them. Later, Ian leaves his home to see Ross. He meets her in the kitchen. She tells him to leave, but he refuses and tries to kiss her, but she refuses as well. Ian gets offended and stomps out of the kitchen. Ross meets with him staring at the sea and tries to talk him to leave. Ian uses this close contact to kiss Ross for the second time. This time she doesn't slide away. Instead, she kisses him back and they make love to one another almost instantly. Meanwhile, at Ian's home, Tom is seen sleeping with Ian's mother Lil, just as what Ian did to Tom's mother. A while after the two ladies talk about their affairs, Ross says she feels happy and Lil says she feels happy herself and doesn't want to stop, also telling Raz she hadn't felt happy in such a long time. She tells Raz they don't have to stop, but Raz tells her the boys will get tired of them soon even if they didn't stop. Few weeks after Harold returns home from Sydney, he spends time with Ross and asked if it was because of Tom's new girlfriend she didn't want to move, but Ross says it isn't that. Later they discuss the matter. Ross finally opens up to Harold and tells him neither her nor Tom could leave their home to come live with him in Sydney. Harold thinks it's because of Lil, but Ross tells him it's just the way they both felt. Out of disappointment, Harold leaves with his car. Sometime after the ladies are in the beach relaxing, Lou is concerned about Saul because he's always hanging around and he might catch them. Ross tells her he can as they laugh about Saul's wife leaving him. Lil sees Ian and Tom fighting and calling themselves names in the water. They rush to break the fight and take them home immediately. Along the way home, they encounter Saul in his car, who stops to give them a friendly greeting. Later at home, Ian cleans Tom's bruise while their mother set up a table for their lunch. As they eat, the environment is serene and calm, also filled with awkwardness. Ian stands up, tells Ross he would be waiting for her in her room. Tom follows suit and tells Lil he will be waiting for her in her room. Few days after, in Lil's apartment, Saul pays them a visit. He confesses to Lil his feelings for her, but she doesn't feel the same way for Saul, so he leaves offended immediately. Saul leaves Lil and Ross laughs at him as he walks away. Some time pass and the two families are getting along with each other. Ian is working with his mother now. He closes from work and goes over to pick up Tom from the theater. When they both ride back home, Tom tells Ian Harold offered him a job as a side director for an upcoming play in Sydney. Tom isn't sure if Lil will want him gone, but Ian tells him she definitely wouldn't want him to miss an opportunity like this because of her. After considering the offer, Tom leaves to Sydney. In a bus, he meets the girl named Mary playing a title character, Roxy, who had a beautiful voice and performed very good. Later he calls Lil's home line and sends his love to the rest. At dinner, Lil talks about the new girl playing Roxy. She thinks Tom might be into her and maybe the girl too might be into Tom. Ross and Ian try to talk her out of it. Meanwhile, Tom accompanied the girl home while they talked and laughed together. When they get to her home, she offers Tom a drink and asked if he was gay. Tom kisses her on the lips and tells her is not. After some time, Ross and Ian takes Lil to a bar. They laughed and talk until Lil says she wanted to get a drink before they leave. Ross and Ian knows behind her laughter she was only panicking on the inside. While getting a drink, a man seated close to her introduced himself as Richard in a friendly manner. When Ian sees this, he comes to take the drinks. Lil orders and tells Richard he was her son so Richard could realize she wasn't a young woman. Soon Lil leaves the bar almost upset about Ian ruining her night. They get into their car and drive back home. Inside their home, Ian comforts his mother, promising her that everything will be just fine. Mary is finally performing at the play and Tom looks at her with admiration and love. When the show is over, Holland tries to persuade Tom to stay for a couple days, but instead Tom insisted on leaving. While resting on the floating wood, Lil is surprised to see Tom appear in the water and kiss her while praising her beauty. At night, Tom talks about his experience in Sydney and his other job offers. When he receives a call, he goes to answer it but lowers his voice, making him completely suspicious to Lil. While later, Roz walks into her apartment with Harold waiting for her inside. he welcomes her and introduces Mary to Roz. Since it was almost Tom's birthday, Harold thought he should bring the birthday boy a special surprise, which was married during Tom's birthday. Lil and Ian attends the birthday and catches Tom dancing with another girl. Tom sees the two and brings the girl forward to introduce her to them. Ian offers the girl a dance while Tom tells Lil Mary was staying in a hotel and he could easily drop her off and come back. Lil tells him not to worry about that, but nevertheless he still drops Mary off and follows her inside for his special birthday surprise. In the morning, Lil is devastated and cries to Roz. She feels what she feared most had happened. Tom, finding a new girlfriend, Roz comforts her and decides to end her affair since either it was going to happen, so she would just make it happen a lot sooner. Later, the two families are gathered. Roz breaks the news of officially ending her relationship with Ian. Ian is offended and says he doesn't have a girlfriend and isn't seeing anyone else, but Roz is more concerned about his future and hers. Ian says he would never forgive Roz and leaves their presence heartbroken. After many months pass, Tom finally gets married to Mary. Later that night, Roz can't seem to stop herself from thinking about Ian. She keeps staring at Ian while he danced with another girl. Harold approaches her just to make sure she was doing fine, since he thought he noticed some unusual atmosphere. Subsequently, Ian goes to Roz. He asked her why she ruined everything, but Roz said she never did. After Ian let her be, Ian leaves with the girl he danced with earlier. After some time, Ian goes over to Raz's home. Raz refused to let him in, although he tried to force his way through and banged as much as he can. Because of that, he goes to surf the following day with rage, ending up and hurting himself on his right leg. Roz and Lil pays Ian a visit at the hospital, but Roz decides to stay out of sight until Ian wished to see her. Lil goes to meet him to tell him Roz was present and she wanted to see him, but Ian refuses. He sees Hannah standing at the door, the same girl he met at Tom's wedding. She helps him with exercise at the gym to get better. At night, Ian calls out for Roz in his dreams, but he's later comforted by Hannah. Ian and Tom meet in a bar. They talk about the future of their relationship with both Hannah and Mary. Tom says Mary would follow him anywhere but mostly will stay at Sydney because of work, while Ian says Hannah was a nice person but he would have to give her an elbow pretty soon. When Ian returns from work, he sees Hannah waiting for him. He kisses her and asks what the matter was. Hannah tells him she was pregnant and hugs him, but deep down Ian is more surprised than she was. Many years past, Ian and Tom are now fathers of two young girls. They spend their time with their mothers and families at the beach. Often Ian asks Roz, who wore sunshades, to take them off, saying it wasn't like her to hide her eyes from him. When he takes it off, he stares at Roz, but she puts the glasses back on. At night, the family prepares to eat dinner, but Lil says she was going home and wouldn't stay for dinner. She greets everyone, including Mary and Tom, then leaves afterwards. Later in the gathering, Tom leaves the group and goes out for a walk. Turned out, Tom went over to Lil's to sleep with her that night. While making love, Lil notices her son was right there when she made love with Tom. Ian rushes back in rage to meet Roz. He wished to speak to her in private. In the middle of her discussion, Ian shouts at Roz for not suspecting that Tom and his mother betrayed them behind their backs. He blames her for making them stop while his mother took her for a fool. While he spoke on top his voice, Mary and Hannah walks into the room. Reluctantly, Ian tells Mary he caught her husband sleeping with his mother. Mary realizes that even Ian and Roz are lovers too.